This is what Alan Watts told children when they asked him questions like, where does the world come from? Or why did God create this world? Where was I before I was born? Or where do people go when they die? And he answered with this very old myth. And I read this from his book called in Hungarian A Könyv, which literally means the book. And I translated it so that you can also understand. And here is how the myth goes. There was never a time when the world began, because the world goes round and round, and the circle has no starting point. Look at my watch that tells the time. It goes round, and the world repeats itself again and again in the same way. Just as the clock moves up to 12 and then down to 6, in the world there is day and night, waking and sleeping, being and dying, summer and winter. There is no one without the other, because we wouldn't know what black is like if we wouldn't see it next to white, or what white is like if we didn't see it next to black. In the same way, there are times when the world exists, and there are times when it does not, because if the world were to exist forever and ever without rest, it would become terribly tired of itself and bored of itself. It comes and goes. Now you see it, now you don't. So because it never gets bored, it always comes back after it disappears. It's like you're breathing. Air goes in and out, in and out. And if you try to keep it in all the time, you feel terrible. It's also similar to hide and seek, because it's always fun to find new hiding places and look for the one who doesn't always hide in the same place. God also likes to play hide and seek, but because there is nothing outside God, he cannot play with anyone but himself. But he overcomes his difficulty by pretending that he is not himself, and in this way he hides from himself. He pretends to be you and me and every other person in the world, every animal, every plant, every rock and star. In this way, he has strange and wonderful adventures, some of them terrible and frightening. But they are only like bad dreams, for when he wakes up, they disappear. So when God plays hide and seek and pretends to be you and me, he does it so well that it takes him a long time to remember where and how he hid himself. But that's the fun of it. That's what he wanted to do. He doesn't want to find himself too soon, because that would spoil the game. That's why it's so hard for us, for you and me, to realize that we are God in disguise, pretending not to be himself. But when the game has been going on long enough, we will all wake up and stop pretending, and remember that we are all one self, the God who is all there and who lives forever. Of course, we must remember that God does not have a human form. People have skin, and there is always something outside our skin. If there were not, we would not be able to distinguish between what is inside and outside our bodies. But God has no skin and no form because there is nothing outside of him. Inside and outside of God are the same. And although I spoke of God in the masculine, not the feminine, God is neither male nor female. I didn't say is because we usually use that for inanimate things. God is the self of the world. But we can see God for the same reason we can see our eyes without a mirror, and we certainly can bite our own teeth or look inside our own heads. Our self is so cleverly hidden because it is God himself who is hiding. You might ask why God sometimes hides in the form of horrible people or pretends to be a man in great sickness or pain. First, remember that he does not really do this to anyone else, but only to himself. Also remember that almost every enjoyable story has to have bad people alongside the good, because it is precisely because we want to know how the good guys defeat the bad guys that the story is exciting. It's like playing cards. At the beginning, we shuffle the cards, which is like the bad things that exist in the world. But the point of the game is to make this shuffle nice and tidy, and whoever does it the best is the winner. Then you shuffle the cards again and play another game, and that's how it goes with the world. Now, of course, this is just a myth, a story about this ultimate reality, the universe and who we are. But this reality is beyond our conceptual thinking. We cannot put it into words. Trying to find out who we truly are is like trying to see our eyes with our own eyes, or trying to bite our own teeth. This is why we have to use myths and stories to talk about this ground of being, this ultimate reality that tells us what we can compare it to, differentiating it from what it actually is. And myths and stories are very useful, and we use it a lot. For example, when talking about electricity, we might compare it to how water flows in tubes. But we cannot take myths too seriously or literally, believing it word for word, because in the same way we don't mistake electricity with water. Taking myths too seriously is like climbing on a sign instead of following the path that it shows us, or a finger pointing to the moon, and instead of looking at the moon you start sucking on that finger. So of course this is not some kind of scientific definition of what reality is. This story and these analogies just tells us what we can compare it to, that we and reality are like that. But this story slips in the secret that this ultimate ground of being is you. Now, not the ordinary, superficial you that this ultimate reality assumes or pretends to be like, but the innermost self that escapes all observing, because it is him that is doing the observing. It's like trying to see your eye with your own eye. Like, I'm not sure if this is clear, I'm still trying to understand it, but basically there is no separation between you and the rest of the universe. It's all just one. It's all one big marvelous happening. It's all just one big marvelous system of wriggles, and we pick out certain wriggles and call it clouds. We pick out certain wriggles and call it trees. We pick out certain wriggles and call it myself. So the only difference between myself, what I regard as myself, and the rest of the world is just an idea, is just an illusion. Because reality is not about ideas, it's not about concepts. Reality is just reality. We confuse reality as it is with how we think about it. But in our culture, you can't just say that you are God, I am God, God and me are one, because they lock you up, they think that you have gone mad, that you're out of your mind. But this is because we think of God as this king of the universe that is personally and consciously observing the whole universe and taking care of every little detail of it. But this is not the God that is in the story. You can replace God with all kinds of things. The ground of being, ultimate reality, or as the Chinese call it, the Tao, or if you're familiar with the Vedanta, you can call it the Brahman. This is the name they use for this ultimate reality that underlies this whole universe. I talk about it more in the other video I made called Your Ego is an Illusion. You can check it out, it's in the description. They don't see God as a separate entity or being that is controlling this universe from above. They see God as being below everything and playing this universe from within. And no Hindu can realize that they are not separate from everything else. They are not an individual self, that they are God disguised, without simultaneously realizing that this is also true for everyone else. Because everyone else is part of this one Brahman, they call it, this oneness. In the Vedanta philosophy, there is nothing other than God or this Brahman. That is all there is. It seems like there are other things, but it's because this Brahman is playing hide and seek with himself. It is the mind that separates things from one another. It's only an idea that separates it. Because all of this is just one happening that is happening right now. It's this marvelous system of wriggles. And we describe certain things in this reality just as we pick out certain stars as constellations. But they are not out there already grouped as constellations. It's there in the mind's eye, but if there are no humans to observe it, it's just there. All is just there, happening in just this one happening, everything interconnected with each other. It's only us that we think that we ourselves are separate beings from everything else. You have to realize that this universe of seemingly separate things doesn't last forever. It appears and disappears just like a wave. As this self, capital S, is hiding and then trying to find himself again. Now, I'm just saying that I'm still new to this. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just like talking about it, discussing with other people. So if you have any thoughts about this, or you think that I'm wrong, leave a comment about it. I'm very interested. So I hope you like this video. I also made another video about similar to this. It's called Your Ego is an Illusion. There's a link in the description. If you're also interested, I'm doing free calls if you have any questions, or you want any advice, or you want to talk about something. You can send an email to me. My email is in the description. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like more videos like this, you can subscribe, join this journey, join this community. So I hope that you will have a great day. Goodbye.